what's up? It's Debbie, and I am back with more True Crimes of Criminal Minds. Today, we are talking about Season 1, Episode 13, called Poison. And the true crime case that we are going to talk about is Stella Nickell and the Seattle, Washington Excedrin poisonings. Okay guys, I am having technical difficulties today. This is the second time I'm recording this and I am unable to plug in my microphone. So I hope you all can hear me okay. I apologize in advance. In this episode, there are a series of poisonings that happen and the BAU are called in to try to find the poisoner. And they look at all the victims and they compare them to see areas that overlap. And they come to the conclusion that everybody that was poisoned went to a particular branch of a bank. And they watch the CCTV footage and they say, oh, it's the candy bowl. Everybody that was poisoned got a piece of candy from the candy bowl. Someone realizes that there's a diabetic that's also poisoned and she would not reach for the candy bowl. But what they concluded was that the bank was just a test for the dispersal system. Somebody that's a former employee of a company that is disgruntled and plans to poison the head executives of the company while they are on a business retreat. There's no cell phone, Wi-Fi, it's a nature camp out business retreat kind of a thing. They realized the candy was not the delivery system, and they realized that these people are going to be poisoned and there's nothing that they can do to stop them because they have no way to get a hold of them. So they found out where the retreat was taking place and they drove out to the retreat and with medical personnel, and they got there in time to save everybody that had been poisoned. Now, I'm not going to tell you the dispersal method because that's kind of a spoiler. I do say spoilers sometimes, even though I try not to. But this is definitely a spoiler, so rather than saying it or not saying it, I'm just going to put it at the end of the video. So if you want to know what the dispersal method was, check out the end of the video. I know this case very well because it was the very first true crime book I ever read. And it is called Bitter Almonds and it's written by Gregg Olsen. There's also a YouTube channel. I don't know who owns it. I know that it's called Gregg Olsen Notorious USA. So let's get into it. My sources are the YouTube channel I just told you about, Wikipedia, Snapped has an episode, Forensic Files has an episode, and I also looked at SeattleTimes.com and morbidandmacabre.com. Stella Nickell was born Stella Maudine Stevenson on August 7th, 1943 in Colton, Oregon. Her father worked in the logging profession, so they lived around logging camps as she was growing up. For a while, they lived in a one-room cabin, and then later, they lived in a series of hotels. Stella got pregnant at 16 with her daughter, Cynthia. When she was a little older, she moved to Southern California and remarried and had her daughter Leah. When she left Oregon to go to California, she left Cynthia with her mother. In 1968, Stella was charged with fraud, and I could not find specifics on that anywhere. In 1971, She was arrested for forgery and beating Cynthia with a curtain rod. I don't know if she had taken Cynthia back to live with her at that point, or if Cynthia was visiting. I don't know any other specifics, although that in 1971, she was charged with beating Cynthia with a curtain rod. She spent 6 months in jail for the forgery and took a court-ordered counseling program for the abuse. And Stella Nickell was divorced from her husband before she was 30 years old. In 1974, she met Bruce Nickell, 33-year-old mechanic and heavy machinery operator in a bar, and they got married in 1976. They had a lot in common. They both liked to go out to the bar and party. They rode motorcycles together, went camping, had a lot in common, and had a very good marriage for a while. Bruce was spending about $250 a week on alcohol, and Stella had had enough. She wanted him to go to rehab, which he did, and he got sober and never touched another drop, whereas Stella still had booze all over the house and still would go out and drink. And they would get in arguments when Stella was drunk. Stella was now bored because he didn't go out and party anymore. So they had lots of arguments when Stella was drunk. She worked security at an airport, and she requested the night shift. After Bruce quit drinking, she requested the night shift to avoid him. He worked during the day, she worked at night. Not a lot of interaction there. She started cheating on Bruce, and she even went on double dates with Cynthia. I don't know at what point Cynthia came back into her life again, but as an adult, they double dated. In 1986, Stella decided she was going to leave Bruce. She called up her niece, Willie Stewart, who lived in Houston, and said, "I'm leaving your Uncle Bruce. Can I please come stay with you?" And Willie said, "Yes, but I am leaving in a few days on vacation. I'm going to be gone a couple of weeks. So come now and let's get you all settled in, or wait until after I'm back from vacation." When Willie got back from her vacation, she was told that her Uncle Bruce had died. On June 5th, 1986, they were living in Auburn, Washington. Bruce was 42 years old, and he came home from work one day and he had a headache, and he took 4 extra strength Excedrin. He had chronic headaches, and he took Excedrin every day. And after he took these 4 capsules, he collapsed. They rushed him to Harborview Medical Center, but he died shortly afterward. His death was determined to be natural causes, that he died of emphysema. The second death occurred less than a week later. On the morning of June 11th, 40-year-old Sue Snow, a bank vice president in Auburn, Washington, got up to get ready for work. She had a headache. She took 2 extra strength Excedrin. Her husband also took some Excedrin for arthritis pain. She got in the shower to get ready for work and collapsed in the shower, and her 15-year-old daughter Haley heard it and rushed to her side, and she was rushed to Harborview Medical Center, the same medical center that Bruce was rushed to, and she died shortly afterwards as well. She and her husband, Paul Webking, had only been married for 6 months. And apparently when they were dating, he had another girlfriend. And Sue Snow found out about it and wanted to break up with him. And he said, "No, I won't see her anymore. I love you. I want to spend my life with you. Let's get married." So they got married, and then 6 months later, she was dead. After her funeral, her sister said she never took capsules. She always took tablets. And the reason why she now took capsules was because that's what Paul liked to take. So they had switched over from tablets to capsules. Paul was also the first person to suggest that it was the Excedrin that she took that killed her. And he had taken some himself and was fine. So that sounded fishy to a lot of people. When her autopsy was done, the autopsy assistant smelled bitter almonds, which is the smell of cyanide. So because they smelled cyanide, they did a blood test that is not routinely done in an autopsy. And that is how they determined that her cause of death was acute cyanide poisoning. Investigators found the source of the cyanide was in 3 pills of Excedrin that was in the bottle in the Sue Snow home. Excedrin recalled all of their capsules in the area when another tainted bottle was found. So the drug companies wanted to catch the person responsible, so they got together and they offered a $350,000 reward to anyone that could give them information that would lead to the arrest of the perpetrator. On June 19th, Stella called the police to say that her husband had recently died after taking Excedrin. And it was ruled natural causes, but she thinks that it was from the Excedrin. Even before the death of Sue Snow, Stella Nickell insisted that Bruce did not die of natural causes, that it was an accidental death. Bruce had already been buried, and the only way they could test without exhuming the body was to get a blood sample that was still at the eye bank after his death, and it showed that his death was from cyanide poisoning. They also found 2 tainted bottles in Stella Nickell's house. Paul Webkeen and Stella Nickell both filed a wrongful death suit against Bristol Myers, the maker of Excedrin. FDA inspected the North Carolina plant where the Excedrin was manufactured and found no trace of cyanide in the manufacturing of the Excedrin. On June 18th, Bristol Myers recalled all of the Excedrin from the whole country. They also told people not to take any Excedrin that they had, and they were offering to buy back the bottles that people had. They also had published the lot number of the medication that Sue Snow had. So Stella Nickell's was also the same lot number. And that was when she called police to say, I think the Excedrin killed my husband. So they tested the blood from the eye bank and found that he had been poisoned with cyanide, and that caused his death. 2 days later, they recalled all of their non-prescription capsules, not just the Excedrin, any non-prescription capsule. And I don't know if you know, but the Tylenol poisonings in Chicago in 1982 was never found. We don't know who did it, but it changed the way our medication is packaged. At the time, there was no foil that you had to take off and the child-proof cap. It was just you unscrewed it and there were pills in there. And the capsules now are non-prescription capsules, come with a band around the middle where they come together, so that you can tell if the actual capsule itself has been tampered with. On June 24th, a tainted bottle of Anacin 3 was found at the same store where Sue Snow bought her Excedrin. On June 27th, Washington State put a 90-day ban on non-prescription capsule medication. So no more people would die. Because at this point, they don't know what the extent of the contamination is. The FBI started an investigation into product tampering. Now, this was the first case that was convicted after the Tylenol poisonings of '82. It's 5 years later. The first to be convicted under the new federal product tampering laws that were put in place because of the Chicago Tylenol poisonings. The FBI examined the capsules, and they had little green flakes inside mixed in with the cyanide. And they had no idea what that was. They just had no clue, but they knew that it was a clue to finding who did this. So they did further tests, and they found that the green flakes was a fish aquarium product called Algae Destroyer. One of the FBI agents remembered seeing a fish aquarium at Stella Nickell's home. Now, at this point, Paul Webking and Stella Nickell are both suspects in the death of their spouses by the Excedrin poisoning. So, Stella Nickell had a smaller, I believe Gregg Olsen said it was 5 total insurance policies, and some were for smaller amounts to pay off things like credit cards. But there was a bigger life insurance policy, and it says in some places it was for $30,000, other places say $76,000. But if the death was determined to be an accident, she would get $100,000 or $150,000, depending on the source that you see. But what it all comes down to, it's not important that we know the accurate amount of money. What's important is that she could have gotten away with this murder, but she was determined that his death should be found to be accidental so that she could get the highest payoff of the life insurance. Both Paul Webking and Stella Nickell were asked to take polygraph tests, and Stella Nickell refused. Her lawyer said that she was too shooken up to take a polygraph test. Investigators got even more suspicious of Stella when they found 2 bottles of Excedrin in her home that were both tainted with the cyanide, which means she had to buy 2 bottles at the same time. And I don't know about you, but I buy 1 bottle of pain reliever at a time, and then when it runs out I go get another. But she had 2 separate bottles that were tainted, and they were bought at 2 different stores. So the detectives that remembered seeing the fish tank canvassed fish stores in the area. And at one store, the clerk there, Tom Noonan, he had remembered selling Algae Destroyer to Stella Nickell. And they came in tablets, and he told her that if you just put the tablet in the tank, it'll just sit there and not dissolve. So you need to crush it. So she had some type of a pill crusher, a mortar and pestle. Mortar and pestle's the bowl with the little stone wand thingy. I'll try to find a picture. There are much easier, newer ways, but in this case, she used a mortar and pestle to crush up the Algae Destroyer that she put in her tank. And that's important. That's going to come back to bite her. So they came to the conclusion that she crushed up the cyanide in the same container where she had crushed up the Algae Destroyer. And that's why there were green flakes of an unknown substance that they later found to be Algae Destroyer in the tainted capsules of cyanide. So at this point in time, Stella Nickell takes a polygraph test and she fails. So I think pretty much by this point, all the suspicion is on her. They didn't have any hard evidence against her, so they were having a really hard time making a case against her. The pills had 4 times the lethal dose of cyanide. And cyanide is the deadliest poison because it deprives your body of oxygen. The detectives never found any proof of her purchasing cyanide. They never found the algae destroyer. The only thing they knew was that Tom Noonan had told them he sold it to her. They did not find the mortar and pestle that crushed these things up together. So they had no concrete evidence that she poisoned these pills. It was very strong suspicion, but it was all circumstantial and nothing that they could prove. 5 days before Bruce died, she had written a letter to her creditors saying she was having money problems and she was having marital problems and that Bruce would be out of the picture soon. Now, you could give her the benefit of the doubt because she has told her niece she's leaving him and wants to go live with her. Maybe that's what she meant. Or maybe she meant that he wouldn't be around anymore. In January of 1987, Cynthia now goes to the FBI and tells them everything. She tells them that her mother was bored with Bruce because he didn't like to go out and party anymore, and that she wanted to kill him for the insurance money, and that she tried to run him over with a car but couldn't do it. She decided on poison as the easiest, less traceable way to murder him, and it would be found to be an accidental death, and she would get the full price of the insurance policy. She cheated on Bruce. She double dated with Cynthia, and Cynthia told the FBI all about it. She told the FBI that Stella had decided to poison him. So her first poisoning act was with seeds from a foxglove plant. And foxglove, if you don't know, is also called digitalis, and it is also made into a heart medication called digoxin. Now, what digoxin does, I'm going to try to do this really quick. I don't want to bore anybody with medical facts, but what digoxin does is when your heart is beating so fast that it's not pumping hard enough to get the blood and the oxygen in your body to circulate, what digoxin does is it makes it squeeze harder. But as you can see, not squeezing very hard, your heart rate is faster. In order for it to squeeze more strongly, it slows the heartbeat down. Now, as a nurse, I had to take the pulse of my patients before I gave this medication to make sure that it wouldn't slow their heart down to a rate that would be dangerous to sustain life. But Bruce did not die from the foxglove. He only got sick. And that's all I've seen in the research. He got sick. So I don't know if he threw up or had chest pain or just felt slow and sluggish. It doesn't give specifics as to why the foxglove did not kill him. It just said that he got sick. Cindy told the FBI that Stella had taken books on poisoning out of the library and had never returned them. So they searched her home and they found the books, and they found her fingerprints on the pages in the books that referred to cyanide. Cindy said that Stella discussed with her how they were going to spend the money from the life insurance, $100,000 or $135,000, whatever it was, the higher number. And because he had been found to die of natural causes, Stella then poisoned more bottles to kill someone else. So she put this plan in motion that she was actually going to have to kill a stranger or multiple strangers in order to get his death ruled an accidental death versus natural. If Stella were to be found not guilty of the federal charges of product tampering, she could still be charged with 2 counts of murder by the state of Washington. Either way, she's in hot water right now. If the grand jury decides she didn't product tamper, she could still be charged with murder by the state. On December 9th, 1987, the grand jury indicted her for 5 counts of product tampering that resulted in the death of 2 people. And she was arrested that same day. She took the stand in her defense, and Cindy took the stand testifying against her. A lot of people believe that Cindy and Stella planned this together. And when Cynthia saw it going sideways, she decided the drug companies are offering a reward. So I'm going to testify, pretend like I had nothing to do with this, and get my mom arrested and get my reward money. And they offered, it was either $300,000 or $350,000, and she got $150,000. I don't know why she didn't get the whole amount, but she got $150,000. And here's the thing, this is why people believe that she was complicit, because she has disappeared. She got the reward money, disappeared. To this day, nobody knows where she is, as far as I know. She's changed her name, she's moved, she's off the grid, nobody knows anything about her. So basically, she took the money and ran. The trial started in April of '88, and it lasted for 5 weeks. And the jury deliberated for 5 days and found Stella guilty of all 5 counts of product tampering. She was sentenced to 2 90-year sentences for the death of Bruce Nickell and Sue Snow, and she got 3 10-year sentences for the product tampering of the other bottles. She is at a federal correctional facility in Dublin, California. She was denied parole in 2017, and as of now, she is 78 years old and has served 34 years. If she is released in 2040, which is her release date, she will be 96 years old. In May, she petitioned for compassionate release because she's older and she has health problems, and she says that she cannot get the health care she needs in the prison system, and she's made arrangements that if they let her out, she can go live with a friend of hers that lives in Las Vegas. In this petition, she said this: "I am accused of not knowing the moral crime that I committed. Nobody knows better than I the depth of my heinous offense and how deeply it goes against the accepted standards of conduct. I am most remorseful for being responsible for the loss of 2 human lives." In this petition, it says that federal rules make her eligible for parole after 1/3 of her sentence has been served. If she stays incarcerated until 2040, that will be 2/3 of her sentence, and she will be 96 years old. So that's all I've got for Stella Nickell and Season 1, Episode 13, Poison. Next week, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite episodes with one of my favorite actors who is gone now, R.I.P. Michael Massey. It is Season 1, Episode 14, and it is called Riding the Lightning. And the true crime case will be Fred and Rosemary West.
Make sure you seal the envelope so there's no cheating, Brad.
Hey, you there, one. Anything?
Negative. We checked the...
Oh, God.
These guys are in bad shape, getting worse by the minute.
Who's the sickest?
That one over there.
Medic.
He's having trouble breathing. Hyperventilating, I think.
What time do you look the envelopes?
They said around 12:30.
I'm a federal agent. You're gonna be fine. This is gonna make you feel 100%. Relax your breathing.
I'll see you guys later. Have a great week. Bye! To try to abduct. No, that's not what the BAU does.